everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Dad. It's Nate and Francis. Nate, we had a bit of weather here recently. Weather that you're pretty familiar with. I don't think many of our listeners are, though. We had a lot of tornadoes. I think 12 so far have been confirmed in the St. Louis area back on Friday. And as an Illinoisan, as an Indianian.
Disrespect me. Say that I'm from the state that's like Indiana if it was better. Because there's Indiana if it was better to the left or to the west. And then there's Indiana if it's worse to the east, Ohio.
Just continuously gets worse the further east you get till you hit the Appalachians, and then it's all East Coast, and we're not even going to get into that. But from Indiana, I know that you guys had to deal with a lot of tornadoes too, and tornadoes, as it turns out, really only a Midwest thing.
No. They have them in the South too, quite a bit. Not as much as Indiana or as the Midwest, but they definitely have them in the South. Like Texas, you can't call Texas the Midwest, and they get hit with tornadoes. Oklahoma gets hit with tornadoes. The Plains have them.
The Plains areas and the Midwest. Anything between the mountain ranges, I guess.
Yeah, it's a strange phenomenon. Did you have the green sky beforehand?
It was pretty dark. So this didn't come until we didn't start getting hit till 9 o'clock at night. Oh, yeah. So I didn't notice a green sky, but also we got hit with a lot of hail. You've seen that before, right? So, when the sky turns green. It's really surreal. Mm-hmm. I had never experienced tornadoes, and we had dust storms in New Mexico that could become like tornadoes, but they were nowhere near as powerful or long lasting. They would have the funnel cloud and the spinning. Yeah, exactly. But it was nowhere near as big. And I think it's because of what's it called? It's probably a lot of the weather, the terrain. New Mexico's really mountainous, but it's got, a flat area closer to the Texas border. But I had never experienced that. And I remember, I want to say the first summer we were there. So right before I turned 12, I remember we had a really bad one and the alarms went off, and the sky was green. That was the thing. It was afternoon. It was stormy. It was hot weather, summer, cloudy, storms coming, but then suddenly the sky turned green in a way that I can only describe as I'm not exaggerating, and it's not just sort of the haze of recalling memories from 29 years ago, flat out. I think other people can back this up. I don't know what causes it, but it's just a strange phenomenon, but that became kind of the thing I always associated it with. Yeah. Tornadoes, you'll notice that the weather in the area suddenly, whatever's happening suddenly stops. If it's raining, you're good. Rain is fine.
Yeah, because you'll have this big thunderstorm and all this shit happening, and all of a sudden it gets calm, and it's the eye of the storm, basically. Yeah.
Right. The shit's about to hit. So we had ones come from the south, which is where I live, and ones that hit up north, but they always split and diverge around St. Louis. St. Louis City itself rarely actually gets hit by a tornado. It does happen, but we are kind of a heat island. So when these kinds of pressure systems come through, it just goes around. So we had one maybe about a mile from the house, but they didn't get too close, but they really fucked up some stuff down in South County.
Yeah, I can recall we had one that hit in Hamilton County whenever that same summer. I can recall this time of year can be weird. You can have strange, because it's just the land mass and the shifting air currents and stuff. You can have strange things where you'll get, for example, unseasonably warm weather, well above freezing, in the 50s in January. And then suddenly a cold front comes through and it gets down into the teens in Fahrenheit. So this is well below 0 Celsius. And then, you have thunderstorms, thunder snow, big thunderstorms in January. Similarly in March, this could happen where you'd have a day where it was 60 or 65, and then suddenly it's 30. And when you have that big of a change in the cold, I learned this taking climatology, that a lot of the crazy storm stuff is happening is when cold air is moving in. When a cold front comes in and hits warm air, you get the turbulence and circulation, and that's gonna. Whereas when a warm front comes in, when there's cold air, typically it just rains. It's nowhere near as turbulent. But yeah, I remember that happening a lot. I don't know. They have weird weather phenomena here. Because of the Alps and the mountains, and sort of what they call foehn winds, or what they call la bise in French, the sort of hot, dry. I think it's due to the fact that mountain slopes affect, when air moves over, it can cause it to, if I remember correctly, precipitate out all of its moisture and then come down the mountain really, really dry. And when you think about that happening sometimes in wintertime, when you've got ice, snow, etc. built up, you suddenly get hit with hot, dry air, it can cause shit to happen and melts, avalanches, and just it's a strange phenomenon. And then obviously in Afghanistan we had dust storms that looked like something out of a horror movie, out of The Mummy. You know what I mean? But yeah, tornadoes definitely. It was weird because I had never experienced one. And the spring before we moved to Indiana from New Mexico was when the movie Twister came out. So we were seeing all the ads for Twister on the TV and stuff on it, making fun of it on Saturday Night Live, and that Goo Goo Doll song that sounds like fucking Sammy Hagar. Was it Long Way Down. That was a hit single, and they're doing all the like the clips in the music video from Twister. And it was sort of like, you understood semantically what a tornado was, but had never experienced it. But to this day, I've actually never seen one in person. And shouts out to my friend Ross Palethorpe, who's been on the show before, whose dad is a guy from Scotland who is obsessed with tornadoes and has basically experienced horrible orthopedic injuries by having the van he was in doing storm tracking fucking flung by a tornado. And that's not enough. Not enough. Still wants more fucking tornadoes. I don't want tornadoes, man. I am okay with not seeing them.
No, this is why everybody in the area has a basement or should have a basement, because those tornadoes come in, they'll fuck your upper roof, your house, everything above. But like if you're in the basement, you're gonna be good. Yeah, Twisters. I didn't watch the Glenn Powell Twisters.
Kind of like an early debut, Philip Seymour Hoffman as like a breakout actor in that film as well. But I mean, I saw it on HBO because when we moved to Carmel and my parents got basic cable, they did the little teaser couple of months of free premium cable, and so we had like HBO and Cinemax, and so I've seen it, but I've seen it in the first Clinton administration, so I really have no memory of it. Unless there's something really violent or really horny from movies from the mid to late 90s, even if I've seen them, I don't really remember them.
I forgot that movie. So the original Twister, Helen Hunt was the big one, Bill Paxton. It also had Cary Elwes in it, and I forgot that he was Wesley from Princess Bride. It's always funny when he pops up.
Bill Paxton's a good one too, because he was everywhere for a while and then nowhere.
Yeah, he was. He was in Aliens. He was in Tombstone, True Lies. Yeah, he was big in the night. He was in Titanic.
Yeah, he was.
Right.
Yeah, wasn't he also in? Am I wrong to think that Bill Paxton was in? He wasn't in Independence Day, right? Was that, or was he? Am I mixing this up? No, it was somebody else. It was another guy.
Bill Pullman is in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mix them all up. Kind of like there's another one that has happened, like Randy Quaid versus Dennis Quaid. Like very different guys. You probably shouldn't mix them up. Yeah.
So we had some tornadoes. Good times. We got into the basement. Of course, also a funny thing about tornadoes is that like you don't just go like there's a tornado, that's two tornadoes. Like because it all happened at like 9-10 o'clock at night, they climate and weather people have to go out and say, all right, so we had a shitload of destruction over here. We have to go and determine whether or not that was a tornado. And the way you do that is you say, all right, this house was fucked up. Where did all the pieces go? And if all the pieces went in one direction, that's just wind. But if all the pieces are everywhere, then that's a tornado. So that's how we tell. So far, I think it's like suspected 12, confirmed. Last I saw was like 6 tornadoes, but
wow,
we had some problems. Again, though, I went into the basement. I was good to go. No problems for me.
Yeah, man. I mean, we haven't really had extreme weather here. I mean, this is a thing that's been happening more and more recently, which won't surprise you, which is that obviously Western Europe and Central Europe are not particularly suited to extreme heat because it's a pretty uncommon phenomenon. Like up until recently, I mean, you'd have hot weather in the summer and you'd periodically have heat waves, but the idea of it being like in the equivalent of the 90s Fahrenheit on a regular basis in the summer is rare. That's not in sort of, living memory. That's not a standard thing in Western Europe and Central Europe. It is in Southern Europe to some extent, depending on where you are, but they've got more stuff that's built for that. Places in Spain and Portugal, Southern Italy, stuff like that, Corsica, Sardinia, Malta, they are at least used to that.
Is that why Europeans love to vacation there, because they have air conditioning?
Well, no, they wouldn't have air conditioning, but like the houses are built and stuff is built to withstand the heat or to keep you cool in the summertime. They have, thick walls, high ceilings, stuff like that. And it's not like that's not necessarily foreign to a lot of, aside from Britain and Ireland, where the houses are basically built to they're built under the, to be honest, fair assumption that it will always be the equivalent of like 50 degrees Fahrenheit year round all the time. And unfortunately now, as it's getting hotter, and the fact that like Britain and Ireland are pretty far north, relatively speaking. And so the summer sun is pretty intense, and you get these periods of really, really, for them, unseasonably warm weather. Like, they'll talk about heat waves in Britain when it's, in the equivalent of like the low 80s. And that's becoming the low end of the spectrum of what you can expect in summer there. And so, but elsewhere in Europe, I think people vacation in Southern Europe because the truth is that it's not sunny all the time, even in summer. Like Joe and I were talking about this in the Netherlands. When we were there for our show, for the Lions live show in July, we had I was there for 4 days, and 3 of the 4 days it was hot and sunny, and then the 4th day it was like 65 Fahrenheit. Like we were all, by comparison, we were all wearing like jeans and hoodies at that point, because it was in like the high 80s, and it was basically, I mean, my hotel had air conditioning and the venue had air conditioning in one room, but it's just not that common. But the thing about it is that like, friends of mine from Belgium, the Netherlands, have made this point that like you grow up there and you learn to not waste a sunny day in summer, because like a hot sunny day where you go to the beach, like that's actually it's still kind of rare. I mean, I can recall being in Paris 20 years ago and having to wear a sweater one day in July because it was like cold and windy and rainy.
We are experiencing that. It is March in the Midwest. So yesterday it got up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 27 degrees
80
Celsius.
Fahrenheit, yeah, 26, 27 thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's 0 Celsius today.
Oh, Jesus.
So we're whipping back and forth. That's how tornadoes happen. Like you said, the cold air sinks, the hot air rises, and then the two airs moving start to create spinny winds.
I need to get out of the house today. There's not a cloud in the sky, and the high is 16 today, which is, I think, the warmest it's been so far this year. So that's, 18, 19 is when you're getting into like what you would consider sort of perfect room temperature, kind of like that's when people set their air conditioning in the summer, if it's cold, they set it in their car, they set it to 18. So you're getting into like, when you get into like 18, 19, 20 is like really nice weather, and we're approaching that soon. So, and this place is sunnier on average than Britain, but I'll be real, that's not saying much. You do get a lot of like gray, cloudy days, or like days where half the day is that way. So I'm going to try to take advantage of it, because as I get older, I'm discovering that my mood and my productivity is so much more solar powered than I thought. And like I've got to just get out and do some stuff, like walking, riding my bike, jogging, anything, just to like not become, I mean, because I always get out of the house because I have to go, because like their delivery is insanely expensive here, and there's really just not that many good options. And it's a statement perhaps of how annoying it was getting groceries in London, because like all the grocery stores were far from us, and B, how spoiled for choice we were in terms of like there was a lot of really amazing, I can't imagine it was super healthy, but great, especially like South Asian and East Asian food you could get delivered. That's not the case here. So I cook pretty much every night, which is great. I mean, it's wonderful. And there's grocery stores, like 3 grocery stores literally downstairs from here, and then there's one across the street as well. But on the other hand, like, I mean, I'm getting out of the house every day because I have to go run errands, I have to go buy groceries, that kind of a thing. We don't have a car, but I'm not like in London. I was going either riding my bike or taking the train to work. I'd drop my daughter off at childcare, and I'd go up to the studio, and I'm still in the process of trying to finagle getting my own studio. So, for the time being, I work from home, and some people who have better self-discipline also perhaps aren't in a situation where there's a toddler at home most of the time, can probably work from home and be productive and like feels that they're knocking out everything and doing their personal stuff they need to do too. I am not one of those people. And so I'm just discovering that with the weather being what it is right now, like this is one of those things where like I'm going to regret not taking advantage of this.
Yeah. My wife is having that same realization because our daughter is in a camp this week. So she goes to the zoo and spends all day at the zoo. And, we homeschool and we're always at home. My wife and I both work from home. So my wife is suddenly like, oh shit, I have all of this time to do whatever the fuck I want. And she's got, she's a travel agent. She's got her own stuff that she has to do. But more than once I've come inside and she's just been on the couch working on some crochet and watching like NCIS reruns. So, she's living her best life this week as much as she
really
can.
Nice.
So,
I mean, to be honest with you, I have this tendency to, Cynthia and I were talking about this, that like it would be nice to be able, because we don't have a TV. I mean, the eventual plan is once I get a studio, what we're going to do is I'm going to migrate a lot of the stuff that I have here, the setup we've got and the setup I've got in this co-working space, and we'll probably just get like one big computer monitor, like a 40-inch or 48-inch computer monitor that can be used for all the, if you're plugging into a laptop or whatever, work from home stuff, but then just on a stand, not like fixed on anything. And so that way, if we wanted to watch a movie, like after our daughter's gone to bed, we can just move it into the living room and set it up at an angle on this little side table and watch it. And it's big enough to watch from the couch, because if you wanted to mount something on the wall, the only place that would make sense would be the far back wall, and the TV would have to be fucking enormous. And we just don't watch TV enough, and I don't want to buy a TV that expensive, that big. So we're thinking about doing that. And so the time will eventually come. But for the time being, Cynthia and I were joking that like even just sitting on the couch and being able to like read a book when our daughter's home, unfortunately, like unless she's napping, you can't, because I mean, she has to be watched. And even in places when she's playing nice, like she's not going to let you sit on the couch and relax. What are you doing? No, hell no. That's not happening.
What are you doing not paying attention to me, Dad? Get the fuck over here.
Also, she's got like, I don't know. I mean, this is the wrong country for ball sports where you throw things like baseball, but my goodness, she's got a better arm than I do because she's at the age of like, oh, I like this. Well, I've lost interest. Fling it as far as I fucking can. And like, a lot of her toys are like wood too. So it's just projectiles everywhere, man. Oh my goodness. I love her so much, but it can be a lot. It can be,
did you get mad and punch the wall? Like, no, kid just got done playing with the wooden blocks.
No. Well, I was gonna say, so yesterday she was throwing stuff and she was throwing it in such a way where like it was at risk of knocking stuff over, and I was worried also because I was worried she was gonna hit the window, and also I was worried she was gonna pull this thing that we've got set back that she normally can't reach, but she's getting better at like tippy toes reaching up, and I didn't want it to fall. Like, it's not gonna hurt her. It's not huge, but it's like a wooden toy house little thing where you can put like balls and they go down a spiral into a container and stuff. It's like a motor skills toy for kids. But I was stopping her and I was like, no, stop. And I was gonna grab her and move her away so I could put the stuff away and then get the toy down. And I reached out too hard and I jammed my finger on the little toy organizer and broke my fingernail. And I was just like, it's growing great. I'm a great parent. Yep. I'm so good at this, but she's healthy. She's fine. She's wonderful. I went to the children's toy library place yesterday with her because there was a water cut in our building when they were doing repairs. And so that place is open on Wednesdays. And since we don't have childcare Wednesdays, I took her there. I'd never been. And she had a great time, but it's a fascinating thing because it just doesn't exist in America, or maybe it did in an ad hoc way in some places a while ago, but like it doesn't anymore. And it certainly doesn't in Britain. Like the idea of a kind of a community run by the local authority, community play, like children's play area, soft play area for babies and toddlers, toy library where you can check out things. You just like pay a fee to check things out for a week, but you can go and you can play board games, you can play video games, you can play stuff like ping pong, chess, whatever there's so much stuff for kids. And on Wednesdays, kids, I don't know when the cutoff is, but I think it's middle school. When you start middle school, you have Wednesday school. So basically all the children of primary school age and below are there. And a lot of them are there because like they live nearby and they can just go. And there's adults that run the place. It's, secure, everything is managed, but like they don't have to pay, they don't have to do anything. They can come and they just have to take their shoes off. So I was there with my daughter, and there were a lot of other like childminders and parents, with toddlers and babies. But then we're also like a lot of, there was a little boy, probably about 8 or 9, who sat down next to us, and because we had these little magnet blocks where you can kind of like assemble things out of these like squares and triangles that are magnetized. And after I was kind of following my daughter around, looked back and realized this boy had built like a fucking pyramid. He had basically built like pyramid blocks, like with squares and triangles, and started doing the base. And he used all of the blocks to build this like, and he was wearing a Minecraft shirt. And I was like, maybe Minecraft is good. You're doing Minecraft in real life on a Wednesday morning. But then they were older. Like as I was taking my daughter back when I went to go get her ball of water, and then also get her ready to go home, I passed by because there was a kind of a jungle Jimmy play area for kids. There was a bunch of girls playing there, probably 8, 9, 10, and then towards the end there was a big like a sectioned off area where there was a couple of couches and chairs and like a TV and video games, and there was probably like 9 or 10 boys under 12 sitting there playing video games. And I'm sort of like, this is kind of a third space for kids. This is incredible.
Yeah, our YMCA has something like that. It's got like now that my daughter was 9, she's aged up into the quote teen area, because there's like a spot for babies up to like 3 years old and 3 up to 9, and then 9 upwards. And we haven't taken full advantage of it, but I signed my daughter up for esports at the YMCA, so she's gonna go once a week and learn how to play Mario Kart. But it's just like you said, wanting to give her that third space. Like, hey, here's a place where you can go hang out and there will be other kids there.
But also it's like you're not, because think about it, I remember being a kid, and I remember my best friend in Germany when we were 8, he had an older brother who was my brother's age, and then while we were living there, his parents had another kid. He had a baby brother. And there would be times when, because his family were all from that part of Germany, like, so they'd go see aunts and uncles and grandparents and stuff. And there would be times when this was a different era. So his older brother would basically be like in charge of watching, he would have been about 11 and was in charge of sort of watching the kids. You know what I mean? Now the baby was with his parents, but Daniel was the older kid's name. He was in charge. And like, so it would be me and Chris, my friend, and then all of our friends too. And so it'd be like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds all hang out playing Super Nintendo. But like, it was someone's house, the parents came home, whatever the problems were at the house, like you were kind of an imposition, you know what I mean? And it's like, and there's a lot of things that just, it's different when it's just a thing that you don't have to be invited to, it's just, it's open during certain hours. There's certain rules you have to follow, but you can go. And it's like, there were a lot of parents with their kids. Like you could see there were some of the people playing board games with like their sons and daughters who were probably, probably your daughter's age, there were a couple of other dads. It was mostly moms and like childminders, but just the fact that it exists and that it's free. Like you pay your taxes and whatever you pay here, and it's just a thing that's funded by the canton, and they're all over. I mean, this just happens to be the one that's closest to us. It's right around the corner, and there's schools right around the corner, and there's like this, playground, and I took her outside afterwards and put her on the swing for a while, and she really enjoyed that, and then we came home and had lunch, and she took a nap. And it's like, I think to some extent, obviously it's a challenge when you move to a new place and you have a new language, and also like, I have friends here and Cynthia has friends here, but like you've uprooted your life for a second time in a decade, and it's harder. This is famously a country where it's hard to make friends as an adult, and I'm 40. But like, I think for my daughter, this great. Like of all the places we've been, like this is the best, and it's not even close. And Geneva just, I don't know, it has some things I think that make it kind of unique relative to the rest of Switzerland. Like our current childminder told me that, because she's lived all over Europe, and she said that Geneva's just a little too chaotic and a little too not objectively French for Swiss French people, and certainly for Swiss German people. But for me, like I like it, and also like especially in terms of the size of the city, this is the most diverse place I've ever lived in. It's not even close. Like it's incredible. Switzerland, emphatically not, but Geneva is. Absolutely. It's like more than half the population of Geneva was born outside of the country. Like it's fantastic. Genuinely. I'm in a way, I'm not jealous of kids born today having to grow up with like the political problems of the day, and also like the really kind of cynical use of technology. It's just sort of, that causes all these bad effects, but it's so hard to combat it. But I am a little bit jealous in terms of like the experiences, the things my daughter's going to get to do here, and also growing up bilingual, because I kind of did and then stopped, and then I'm certainly not bilingual in French.
Right. Well, I just always remember that the train that you showed me that had a kids play place area.
Yeah. The train, the Swiss Federal Railways trains. Yeah, a lot of them do.
Yeah, like it's incredible what like a country who's just like, we have this money, let's do something useful with it. What can happen? Because like America could be so fantastic for everybody because there's just so much money here, but we don't do that. We rich people need to put more money on their pile, so we don't get a nice play place on the New York rail.
It's interesting because this country, I can't speak with any like serious authority. I mean, I live here, but obviously I don't know a ton about the history of the place. What I can say is that Switzerland is like, there are countries particularly in Northern Europe, in Scandinavia, where there's kind of like a comprehensive social democracy thing that's obviously being eroded. And, Sweden was kind of hit its zenith for that in the 70s, and they've been eroding it ever since. But like, for example, in Sweden, there's state-sponsored childcare, and you pay like a very small amount. Like I remember somebody saying that like their sister paid like 15 euros a month for 2 kids in childcare, which is insane. Ooh. But also like there's basically zero availability for apartments in Stockholm. Like it's got issues, but in general, there's some things that are really amazing. Switzerland does have generous things like that, but it is not social democratic. And for example, childcare is subsidized based on your income, but it's nowhere near that cheap. Also, Switzerland has some things that can be kind of shocking to some people. Like, for example, if you are on temporary disability benefits for a while through like state assistance, as I understand it, there comes a certain point where if it's declared a non-permanent disability, or they don't agree with it being whatever, you have to pay it all back. So like there's a lot of things where Switzerland is some of the stuff when it comes to being like, I think culturally they are much more tolerant of kids, and just they seem to make accommodations, and they don't think of kids as like little aliens that you have to avoid. Like you see kids places, like people take kids places, like certain things obviously aren't appropriate, but like yesterday, for example, there's a cafe outside, and in the warmer months they set the cafe tables out. It's like right outside of a mall, but they have like a cafe terrace, and it's Wednesday, so like younger kids aren't in school, so there's lots of people there like reading the newspaper or working on their laptops. But there's also like families with kids, and like people like bringing their kids to go sit at the cafe. Like that's just normal. You see kids everywhere. And yeah, like you said on the train, this country is highly regarded in terms of like the quality of its train services. And a lot of people travel by train, and if you're traveling with kids, like it's better for you, it's better for the kids, and it's better for the other passengers if there's a place for them to go. You know what I mean? Like there isn't this mentality of just like, fuck you, suffer. And I mean, like I said, it's not perfect. God knows there's some serious problems. There's some serious problems here. And I think also like we're maybe a little bit insulated from some of the uglier sides of things because just of the fact that Geneva is so not typical of the rest of the country. I mean, even Zurich, which is a bigger city, is just, it's very obvious you are in Central Europe, you are in white people country, if that makes sense. And like, I like Zurich a lot, but I think that it would be far more isolating than living here. Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll leave you with this one before I keep talking forever. I cab ride home back in like October from the airport after I'd gone to the UK for something. And the guy was, the cabbie and I were talking. He was a Somali guy. His wife was immigrant from China. Their kids grew up here and they speak, you know, English and Chinese and Somali and French. And he was joking with me because I told him about my daughter and how old she was, just turned a year old. And he's like, well, you just wait about a year or two and you're going to enter what I call cake time, because you're going to be going to years of cake, dude. You go and just birthday party after birthday party, and you just got to be careful with your health because you're going to have so much cake, more than you could ever want, and you're going to feel obligated to eat it. And it was a funny conversation. I mean, the dude was a really funny guy, but he basically said, he's like, you know, I like Geneva because it just feels like everyone has the opportunity to come here and bring the good things about your culture and just like kind of share that with other people and learn from other people. He's like, it's not like French people where like they just, all they ever see with immigrants is just things to complain about. It's like here, it's like, yeah, basically everybody's an immigrant, it feels like, or they're the children of immigrants, and it's like, but you're still Swiss, so just, you know, bring something good to the table. And I was like, yeah, man. I mean, I realize I'm speaking to another immigrant here, but like, yeah, that fucking rules. Yes, I support that. Now, definitely do not look into the percentage of people who vote for the far right parties here. But weirdly, the one far right party that seems like is doing pretty well here is basically it's hard to explain. They're like they're like a far right party that's not anti-immigrant. They're anti-cross border worker. They're like, we should take care of the residents of Geneva and do these things and not have all the economy built around the idea that we're like a jobs hub for people who live in France. There's a lot of very far right stuff in their sort of programming, but they know that an explicitly far right anti-foreigner message isn't going to land here where everyone is a foreigner. And so
so it's just fuck the French, which I think is the thing everybody can get behind.
Not even fuck the French. Like we fine with the French if the French want to live here and pay rent and pay Swiss taxes, but there's a word in French, it's frontalier, basically it's like cross-border workers. And because of Schengen and because of some of the tax arrangements, you know, a lot of people live in the surrounding communities in France and commute into Geneva for work. If they can even be paid in euros. I mean, there is like a tax sharing thing between Switzerland and France, so that those communities in France get some of the tax revenue, because it used to not be that way. But it's a huge population of people live, you know, in and around the parts of the French department of was it Auvergne or Rhône-Alpes, that whole area, or Haute-Savoie, and commute in by car. There's tons of trains. There's the city trams run at least in a couple places into France. And also a lot of people in Geneva cross the border to go into France to buy groceries because it's a lot cheaper. So traffic is bad. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. And there's also this notion that being so close to the border means that like there's a lot of crime and insecurity. But I mean, you hear that stuff in the news, but it's relative, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like everything's relative to America. Let's be fucking real here. But also it's like relative because it's far more dangerous in London in terms of getting robbed, getting burgled, that kind of a thing. But like it does happen. Yeah, it does happen, and people's apartments get burgled. In the night, this will happen where people will run up and just like drive cars into the glass window, like the storefronts, to like break into jewelry stores and stuff. Like that does happen.
Right, but that's not crime against me. So that's not. Yeah, I mean, it's like saying, oh, there's so much. The crime is so bad because this guy popped the CEO of a health insurance company. It's like, well, that's not a thing I have to worry about. You know, there's crime that affects me and crime that doesn't, and I'm more worried about the crime that affects me.
Yeah, but I think that the phenomenon of people getting their apartments broken into is a pretty cause for concern. Oh, yeah. People, because there's, you know, it's people, lots of people ride bikes here. A lot of people ride electric bikes here. Like there's a phenomenon of people, you know, they just coming with a van and stealing electric bikes. Because this is a bit of a shock to me, but I understand culturally why, because having been other places in Switzerland, like even in big tourist towns next to train stations, people's apartment buildings will have racks for bikes and no one has locked them. You know what I mean? Here people lock them, but like a lot of times what they do, even with the big electric bikes, is they put like a lock and chain through like the wheels and the pedal assembly and stuff, so you can't like ride it away. But obviously that's not going to stop like two guys in a van from picking it up and throwing it in the van. And so like there is the sense of like, oh, well, we have to be more crime conscious here than like you would in, I don't know, Interlaken, where I saw those bikes, or even in like the canton of Vaud or the canton of Valais and places near to here. So yeah, I get the concern, but it's all relative. Like, you know, people complain about stuff that's, I mean, you barely ever hear anything about this sort of a thing. Like it's just, I mean, not only do I feel safe, but like you'll see little kids on their own on the bus with like new iPhones and shit. You know what I mean? Which like,
yeah, a bully would have stolen that in America a long time
Britain
ago.
Too. Yeah, like you're not gonna let a 9-year-old have a new iPhone by themselves because it's gonna get stolen. Like, yeah, that just doesn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure it does happen, but like it's just the mentality is such that like, I mean, and you see it too, I think culturally, but also in terms of like safety, in terms of the perception of safety. Like lots and lots of kids are just kind of out on their own, starting from age, let's say double digits. That's just a thing you see.
I was asking my mom about that recently, about when they started leaving me at home alone, and they said around 12, which I think with my daughter I'd be comfortable with. But I remember, you know, at her age, just getting on my bike and like just fucking off for an entire day with my friends. You know, my parents were like, here's $10, don't come back until 4 p.m.
Yeah, you know, like want to ride bikes
with your friends,
let's just go somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, there were like 4 of us, so four of us on bikes riding around. So all of our parents were like, yeah, if one of them gets hurt, the other ones are there to, you know, kind of take care of the situation.
I mean, we were doing that. Yeah. I mean, my parents, in retrospect, I think there were some circumstances that kind of forced it, but like I would be left home alone, you know, for a small thing, like small periods, brief periods, a couple hours, like starting around 6 or 7. When my mom got a job, there were times when I was 9 or 10 when I was home alone a lot. And in retrospect, like it wasn't like, there were some days when like elementary school didn't have school, but middle school did. So my brother was in school, but I wasn't, and I was home all day when I was 10. And like that actually was, that level of like isolation and boredom was actually really bad. Like I don't think it's a good idea. But it was a different time, you know?
Yeah, I had that too, because during summer I didn't have school, but my parents both had to work. So it would just be like my mom would leave. My dad left early. My mom would leave like maybe at 8 or 9 and be like, look, I'll be back at like 3. Don't burn the house down. And for certain times, my older brother lived with us during that time. My older brother, when I was born, went off and joined the army. And then by the time, you know, I'm of this age, he was living at home because he wasn't out of the army, but he'd stopped being active duty. So he was a guardsman, but he worked nights. So he was always asleep in the basement. So I was like, look, if anything happens, your older brother is here, but don't go running around outside. Don't leave and go hang out with your friends. Because we just, you know, we trust you to ride your bike with your friends on Saturdays, but during the actual work week, they wanted me to stay inside. And I watched, you know, I didn't have cable, so I watched a shitload of I Love Lucy. What was the Bob Barker, Price is Right.
Oh God,
watched a lot of Price is Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would come home from school when I was in grade school in New Mexico, and my brother had a longer bus ride to come home, so he wouldn't be home for a while. I think we got out of school about the same time, but he wouldn't be home for a little while after. And then my parents wouldn't get home till, so I would come home from school, you know, when I was 9, 10, 11. Eventually my mom quit the job she had, so she was home when I would have been about almost 11 when that happened. But for those first, you know, 2 years of school in New Mexico, I come home and I would watch the news, or I would watch what I was on TV on Fox. I remember I wasn't interested in Power Rangers, but they would do like, I want to say some of those like Batman cartoons, and then they would have The Simpsons, 2 episodes of The Simpsons. Sometimes they'd have Star Trek on, Star Trek The Next Generation, like reruns as well. It's like it was still going at that time, but reruns, I'd watch that. Sometimes they'd have The Critic, which actually is a really funny show.
It is, yeah, it's good.
So I'd watch that, and you know, I'd make a snack or whatever, and just, you know, I was relatively, I mean, self-sufficient as a kid. But I think the thing for me is that, yeah, it was just a different time. I think coming home from school on your own was fine. Coming home, being out of school all day long with nothing to do and no one to talk to when you're 10 is not. But I mean, like I said, this isn't really meant to, I'm not just like gang up on my parents so much. Sure. It's just like, it was a different time. But I think that in Germany, because we lived in such a small town, me and my friends would go ride our bikes. I mean, in kindergarten, we weren't allowed to. Okay, that obviously.
Sure.
We walked to the kindergarten with our parents. But then starting in first grade, grade, there was like this kind of trial run to show us how to walk to school. And then after the first couple of weeks of first grade, like it was kind of understood, like you walk to school as a kid on your own, or in groups. Like I'd meet up with my friends who lived near me and we'd all walk to school together. And of course, being like 6, it was like no girls allowed, it's all boys. But like, there'd be 3, 4, 5 of us walking to school together every day. In the first terms, like the first couple of weeks, months, we had to wear these little hats, like these like orange caps, just so like people knew that if one of us was lost, there was like, it's a lost first grader.
It's like a prison jumpsuit. Like you don't belong here.
It was a little. Well, I mean, it was like an orange ball cap. Yeah, it was cute.
Yeah, it's a way to say, hey, wait a minute, where are you?
We also had,
because
you've seen the Never-Ending Story. We had the big square backpacks. That was the thing. Our first day of first grade, we had a thing called a Schultüte, which is like it's like a big paper cone full of school supplies, and you carry them like it's a bouquet. So you have these little tiny kids with their backpacks that dwarf them and their big ass, like the big ice cream cone of school supplies. Like I have photos of me with that when I was 6. So I mean, it was. I think I was living in a town of like maybe 2,000 people in the middle of nowhere in rural Germany, southwestern Germany. So like everywhere you went was like old middle-aged and old people watching. Like you couldn't get away with anything as a kid. They knew who you were. Also, I have red hair. There were 2 other, I mean, granted, there were a lot of redheads, relatively speaking, but there were 2 other boys in my class who had red hair. So it had to be one of the 3 of us. Hilariously, my friend Christopher was a fucking hellraiser and he was always doing shit and everyone thought it was me. I was like, no, it's not. No, do you think I have the wherewithal to go pee on a construction site's like all their supplies or some shit or whatever he got up to? Like, no, I'm the nice American boy who doesn't speak German. But I eventually learned it. Yeah, so I mean, we had a lot more freedom. And then, I don't know, New Mexico, dude, like there just wasn't anything. Where we lived, there was middle of nowhere. There was nothing to do, nowhere to go. So like that didn't stop us from just like running around, riding bikes and exploring and tromping through shit. But there wasn't any, like there was a playground that in retrospect was like very austere and sterile. There was nothing. There was a community pool that was like probably 2 or 3 miles away. And in the summer, we would ride our bikes there. And then later on, they built like a shopping center. So sometimes we'd either walk. I remember walking with cash with me, my brother, and our friend and getting breakfast at this restaurant and paying in cash and then going home. And it was like an hour and a half walk to the restaurant. And then we ate and then an hour and a half back. And I would have been like 11. So I was 11. My friend Osher was 11. My brother would have been like 13, almost 14. And it's like, on one hand, I'm sure we looked really funny. On the other hand, like, I'm not trying to make this into like a boomer back in my day thing. It's just like, yeah, there wasn't anything for us to do. So it was novel and interesting to walk a grand total of 3 hours to eat a meal in a restaurant that probably wasn't that good.
Sure. Yeah, I would bike ride down to, there was a Hardee's, and I would just take my bike down there and buy lunch and read a book. And I was probably 12 at this time. If all my friends couldn't come out, I was like, all right, that's fine. Fuck it. I'll go eat a massive cheeseburger at Hardee's by myself, I guess.
It was interesting because in Indiana, relatively speaking, it felt so much better. I look back on it now and I'm like, no, this is like a extremely car-centric, hostile suburb where it's impossible to do anything, but there were sidewalks at least. And sure. I mean, in Santa Fe, there were, outside of Santa Fe where we lived, there were sort of sidewalks, but there wasn't really on the streets, like the streets where we got the school bus, there weren't any sidewalks. There were some paved areas, but like most of the roads weren't even paved. And in Indiana, I mean, it was flat and there were sidewalks everywhere. And so like I had rollerblades and then I had a bike and could go places. We'd go to the video store, like we had money, like cash allowances, and you could get your like card for your family account for like the video store. So we could rent movies. We could go to the grocery store. Like people, I mean, the cops were dickheads, but that came later when we were like teenagers, like even young teenagers, when the cops would just fuck with us just because. Like when we were little kids, it was more like sometimes people would be a little bit weird or like hostile to us being in places like, what are you doing here? And then obviously there was just like other kids who'd be like, say homophobic slurs and throw shit at you because it's sure. Indiana, a kid called me the F slur and threw a hubcap at me from a car because I was wearing wrist guards while I was rollerblading.
Yep, that's how you say hi.
Exactly.
In the Midwest.
Or one time I got called an F slur because I was wearing a bike helmet.
Yeah, what are you, some sort of pussy who doesn't want a head injury?
Well, it's funny because I resisted it for years and didn't wear a helmet, and then I'm very grateful that I learned my lesson because one of the head injury that was recorded the day after for this show when I had the concussion, having spoken to a doctor the second time I got in a bike wreck in London, they were like, yeah, if something that severe, you probably would have died if you hadn't had a helmet on. Hitting the back of your head on pavement that hard, if it caused that much damage with a helmet and you had a rated helmet with a back of the head guard, they're like, yeah, it's possible, and it does happen. Like that's a famous thing. People get punched and they fall down so hard they just hit the back of their head and die.
Yeah.
So
it's not great to crack your head on something.
So yeah, I'm just thinking about the freedom and the roaming around. Yeah, like it wasn't paradise by any means, but it just, I mean, fuck, God knows Indiana sucks, but like we had a little bit more, I think it was just considered more normal, and that parents didn't fear like getting harassed or getting shamed by their peers. And I could kind of perceive the change that happened because, you know, we were teenagers, and then like a lot of the older people in the neighborhood sold their houses to young families. And even in the like late 90s, early 2000s, you could see the change where suddenly the kids who were like coming up on grade school and then like in grade school, you know, up to like middle school age, like they would like a parent would be out there watching them while they like played on their driveway, and they didn't leave their driveway. Whereas for us, like, I'm not going to say, I have no idea what caused this socially or whatever culturally in America, but for us, it definitely felt like, okay, you can do these things, you can go these places, certain places you can't go, don't do X, Y, and Z, be back at this time. That was it. You know, that was really it. And like, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, it was perfect freedom, but it was more like that was the norm. And so, you know, that sounds perhaps a little bit more difficult to comprehend. It's weird because there were definitely attendant risks, and you hear like horror stories and stuff. And also you think about things like outside of the true crime podcast style thing, just more like we crossed a lot of roads with no like major roads, you know, as kids, like to go to the library on our bikes. Like there was just a lot more danger in that regard that I realize now sounds kind of crazy. But
so I also had this, like, you know, when I was this age, what was I doing versus what am I comfortable with my daughter doing? And like, I do feel like maybe I'm being a little too much of an overbearing father to think like, oh, well, I don't want her to be running around on her own at the age of 12 or so, which honestly, like on your own, a 12-year-old girl. Yeah, absolutely not. But like also just the proliferation of like the Child Crusher 2000 cars that we have here in America, like even in a car crossing a street, I worry because there's always some asshole. There's always somebody running it, especially inside of the city. And just, I worry, like, I wish that she had the freedoms that I did and the places to go where I had to go, because it just doesn't fucking exist around here. There's nothing to walk to here. I mean, I get she could walk to the YMCA. It's less than a mile away, but I don't know. I don't want her to get, I don't like the idea of her out by herself. And again, it's different. It is definitely different between, you know, me at the age of 12 with like 3 other boys running around versus would I be comfortable with her walking on her own to the YMCA a mile away? Like, we live in an urban area. It's very, but you know, it doesn't have like what you were saying where like everybody knows who the fuck you are. Like,
yeah, nobody knows. This is a really, I mean, it's not a huge city, but it's a very dense city. There's a lot of people, and we live in one of the most densely populated parts of it. So like, there's just a lot of people. So it's not that kind of small town feeling. But I will say my biggest concern here would just be like, I think we are going to have to do stuff on like holidays or trips for her to be comfortable riding a bike, because this is not going to be a particularly good place for her to learn a bike or learn how to ride a bike in the neighborhood we live in. Like, it's not dangerous, but you have to be experienced. It's absolutely would not be appropriate for a kid to ride a bike. And I don't see little kids riding bikes on the streets here. You see youngerish teenagers to some extent, but like even not that much, because it's just, it's relatively speaking for this country, a big city, and the traffic is pretty intense. And so that's one thing. But like when she's 12 going, I don't know about walking down the street to just randomly wander around, but like going to places, taking the bus, taking the tram, going to things with friends, like I wouldn't worry at all. I mean, beyond the normal ambient worry of when you're a parent. But I think right now, obviously we're still, I mean, she's still at the age where like, even though she hates it, I will pick her up and carry her across crosswalks, not because of a super dangerous, but because like traffic is pretty intense and like she walks slow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Kids that age walk slow. It's like, you can't loiter here in the crosswalk.
No. And it's also funny too, cause like I don't want to call attention to too many things. This is not my nature, but there's so many times when I'll be like, I want to be like, look at that little girl or that little boy over there. They're holding their parents' hands. See, big, cool kids do it. You can do it too. Cause she absolutely refuses. Once I've let her not hold my hand, then she's like, no, fuck you. You can't. No, I don't need your hold. I'm not a baby. And I'm like, God. You can't talk and you're in diapers. I think technically speaking, you are still a baby.
You know, you never want your kid to succumb to peer pressure.
When it's peer pressure of like, oh, cool, older kids wear hats so the sun doesn't burn their eyes, or wear gloves so their hands aren't cold, or wear shoes just in general. Like then I'm like, peer, please, like cooler older kids, by which I mean toddlers and like 5-year-olds, peer pressure my daughter into wearing shoes.
Yeah, it doesn't really work for my daughter. I swear to God, dude, nine fucking years old, and we're still dealing with so much. Like the other day, she had a knot in her hair, so she was trying to put a little tiny knot, trying to brush it out. And so I was like, and this was, I left the house in the morning to go pick up donuts, and I came back, and this was this weekend when she had all this Irish dance stuff going on. So to get this knot out of her hair, she cut it out. But not like, here's the thing, because I saw the knot later in the trash can, and I was like, this is such a tiny little knot that even if we did need to cut it out, it did not require this. But she goes all the way to the base of the head,
of course,
and cuts it off there. And like, you know, when a boy does that, it's just like, well, that's fine. Get the clippers, take them down to baseline 0, shave your hair down. You're going to be fine in a month or so. Your hair is going to grow back. It's a little bit difficult with when your kid who's been growing their hair out for years cuts off like half of their bangs. And it's just like, well, and she's just, and we're like, well, you're going to have to cover that up. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to wear these headbands like 3 days. She's like, nah, I don't give a shit. Like, people can see what, like, you know, this reflects on me, right? Like, people look at you and they make decisions about me based on
you
this.
You think you've got the tank girl haircut and it's cool, but everyone just thinks I'm a bad parent. I mean, for me, it's been a thing with my daughter that I think we talked about this previously about the people coming from giving you advice, and it's just like I'm polite, and I'm often a little bit surprised when people just randomly come up to me. But the thing that is always playing in my mind during and after is always like, oh, do you think this is the first I'm hearing of this? Do you think I haven't tried? Like, at a certain point, we have to go and do the thing that we're going to do. And so if that requires me to either constantly tuck her hands back into the muff when it's cold on her stroller, or make her wear the jacket that has the attached mittens and she gets mad, but it's all I can do for her to keep her hands warm, that's what I do, because I cannot get her to keep gloves on. Like, the child gets a vote, and she loves nothing more than whatever the thing is she needs to be wearing: sunglasses, a hat, gloves, shoes. The shoes she's a little better at now, but before this was the case, nothing more would please her than to get those things and fake you out over the course of a couple of minutes thinking she was good finally, and then just grab it and just like mic drop it out of the stroller over and over. It was like a fucking video game. It's like you're playing as a baby who's throwing things. Like, that's the best way I could describe pushing the stroller from behind and watching the little arm just dropping shit. Like, it genuinely was like you're watching, like you're playing like Mario Kart, but it's in a stroller.
Ooh, that'd be a good, if you're a game developer, like you're pushing the baby stroller, and then you have to hit A or B to catch. Like, you got to left or right to catch the things that are being dropped out.
Well, it's just funny because it's not recognizable as a character, because you're just seeing the stroller from behind. But then when you see the tiny little arm, it's very funny. There's something. Yeah,
you got to make sure you're saving things, because she might drop a spider out. You don't want to save that. You got to save the mitten.
It's comical. There's something comical about their tiny little proportions. Like, there's just something very funny about, like, obviously it changes over time, but I certainly don't want to make fun of her, and I don't want to like prolong anything where she's upset. But like, sometimes when she can't reach something because her arms are too short, and like her extremely angry, frustrated sound it is like, you want to resolve it, but it's extremely funny. I mean, just laughing because I try not to share photos online at all. But there were times when, for example, going to the grocery store and like doing that same photo of the perspective, like you're looking at the, it's a car driver game, and it's like in the aisle with all the Monster Energy drinks, and you're just sort of like, yep, you've got a loot box right here. You know what I mean? Baby's reaching out, got to get a white Monster for the 18-month-old. But
yeah, the hand goes out, grabs a Monster, and all of a sudden the stroller goes 2 times speed.
Yeah. You've got, it's having the star and the blue shell in Mario Kart. Everyone else gets obliterated, and you're going like ultra speed.
You have to bump other babies out of the way and everything.
Oh man, I mean,
fatherhood, the game. Look, I'm gonna tell you. You talked about it being difficult to make friends. Well, what you got to do is you just got to have your kid make friends, and then you make friends with the parents, and that's how it seems to work out. That's what we're doing with Irish Dance. We've been in Irish Dance for like 6 years, and I'm finally starting to like remember names and talk to people and say, oh yeah, like I think my wife and I are gonna try to do a trivia night, like a fundraiser trivia night for the Irish Dance. But like that's really like I mean, look, I talk to you, I talk to Carrie and Joe, I podcast, I am constantly online, I'm talking to people all the time. I don't have this like, I don't feel a need to like go out and make more friends, because all my friends are in the tubes that come into my computer box. That's where my friends reside. So, but now I have to like, see, I don't have a lot in common with a lot of these guys. Like, they all the dads like play golf and are lawyers, and they're like, yeah, we love to go to Ireland and do X, Y, and Z. And this, like, I'm a dirtbag that has a podcast about how much I hate being in the military or So, like,
well, I mean, can you imagine my perspective that people are always like, oh, well, I know somebody who's also got a kid your age and they're American or they're British, like they would be great for you guys to meet. And I'm like, that's very kind of you, but chances are good when you think about your standard American or British person who comes here, we're not going to have anything in common.
No, they're not. I don't know, just like what kind of American goes to live in Geneva?
Finance people, elite finance people, and then also people who work for international agencies. So like the UN, UNHCR, all these kinds of the World Health Organization, stuff like that. And then some academics too, because there's like a lot of stuff with humanities, like sociology here as well.
Look, this is a good time, like anything, like with your child's education, get them, if you want to get them into Quantico, you got to make friends with the Swiss FBI baby handlers.
No, I just, to be honest with you, I have some friends here, in real life friends, and quite frankly, I think the biggest thing for me is just, I want her to just kind of feel integrated here, grow up with, like, we want her to go to just the regular schools here, because it's like so much of the kind of international presence of people in Geneva is so incredibly transient. And I'll be honest with you, like, look, cards on the table, the county I grew up in Indiana is one of the wealthiest counties in America. It was a pretty big culture shock coming from Santa Fe, where I went to school, to move there, because I've never lived around that kind of like ambient wealth before. And it's certainly not like the Hamptons wealthy, but it's pretty high income, relatively speaking. Mm-hmm. Like the median income in Carmel now is like well over $100,000. Like it's wealthy. But I still am, in my heart, I think, both between being a military brat and from the Midwest, and I'm somewhat uncomfortable around absurd privilege levels. And when I would take my daughter on the tram to childcare in the other place we used to take her, there was a stop on the way back. It would be right around the time the middle school for international school was getting out, and almost all the kids spoke American English. And like American English doesn't quite have as many tells in terms of your class position as British English does, like nowhere close. And yet somehow it's just like, how do I describe it? Other than it's like, these kids can't help it, but they don't realize how they just sound rich. And I'm like, you're like 13, but you're my enemy, man. I'm sorry. Like, just the shit that you think is normal is just not normal. It'll never be normal to me. And so I just don't want that. I wouldn't want that to be her experience. Also, it feels like everybody so many famous stories, like, oh yeah, this person went to boarding school in Geneva and then they went up with a heroin addiction or like fucking eating disorder. So it's just like, you know what? I'm good. All the members from the Strokes met here. Probably not a good thing.
Well, if you want to do heroin and get an eating disorder, you can always join the U.S. military as well.
Yeah, you can.
We'll get both of those for you. Nate, I have before we wrap up, I've got a bit of an Ask Dad question. This is actually less your dad and more your cooking. I picked up a wok. I picked up an electric wok.
All right.
For a West Bend electric wok. I got it for like $10 at the secondhand store. So I've never wok cooked. I don't know. What do you when you are wok cooking? What do you put in there?
Well, I think the easiest thing to make that a wok you'll see the benefit is going to be, really it's stir fries or fried rice. And I would say the biggest thing with it is obviously like people who cook on woks in East and Southeast Asia, they're cooking at very high temperature typically with like a very powerful gas burner. But another thing that you'll notice is that they're typically like restaurant, like food stalls. So it's not like the guy's dumping every single onion he's chopped that day into the thing to make one person's meal. You know what I mean? Like They're making it on. And so think of that principle. Cut up some vegetables. So I would say some bell peppers, some onions, some green onions, some garlic, and beat some eggs, make some rice, and then put it like on a baking sheet after it's done and let it cool to at least room temperature. And then get some soy sauce, some sesame oil, and hot chilies if you want to put it in. And then what I would say is take like neutral oil, like canola oil, peanut oil, something that can handle a high temperature. Put that in, heat that up in the wok, get it really hot, and then start with stuff like the peppers and the onions in like a small amount. Like imagine like no more than like a imperial measuring cup, like a cup's worth, maybe even less. Take that and scoop in like bell peppers, onions. You start with the bell peppers, cook them. If it's hot enough and it's a small enough quantity relative to how much heat your thing can put out, it won't take long to cook the peppers at all. It'll take like a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and you'll see it happen. And it's a different kind of searing kind of thing to them when it's cooked that hot and it can stay that hot. Because that's the way the guys do it on the stalls. They have like, sometimes they have it, they can control it with their knees. They've got like a little valve handle, and they get it really, really hot to cook, and then they turn it low again when they are swapping things. You know what I'm saying? And basically you cook peppers and then the onions and then green onions and garlic real quick, cook those in, throw throw in the rice, stir it all the way up, get it absorb the oil stuff, let it sit for maybe 15, 30 seconds, stir it up again, pour in the eggs, stir it up, get them evenly beaten, evenly mixed up with the eggs and stuff like that. And then at the last minute, turn the heat off and put in, I mean, you can do soy sauce and stuff when it's still hot, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because it can kind of sear, especially if it's thicker soy sauce. You definitely don't want the heat to be on when you put sesame oil in because it'll just make it taste less like sesame oil. Stir that in, put in any kind of seasoning you want, salt, pepper, white pepper, 5-spice powder, whatever you want to put in, chili powder, stir that up. And then that's your fried rice. And what I'm saying though, is that like, if I kind of have started doing it this way, if I'm making fried rice, instead of trying to do all of it all at once, I make a couple of batches and just work through it because it gets the better consistency, the better overall result. And it's just, I've just found that otherwise it just it turns into like fucking porridge because I had a wok burner in London. I don't anymore. And I know where even I had it. Couldn't use it here. So I can't do the like 150,000 British thermal unit gas burner like I used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you gotta
that's
work
what
in
I
batches.
remembered. You had the gas one. I picked this one's electric. So
yeah.
And mostly I have a big pan that I do 90% of all my cooking in, and I've done fried rice in there. So I don't know if like the wok is all that necessary compared to.
The thing with the wok is that, to be honest with you, what I like about doing it that way is that you obviously have a lot of surface area. You know, you can stir all around. You can get things. It makes it, especially if you've got like, because when you see people making fried rice and sometimes stir fries, like, you know, when it's like a food stall in China, they have a thing that looks like it almost looks like a shovel. It's like a flat spatula, and they use that to like scoop it and scoop it and flip it and things like that. Similarly with stir fries, I mean, that's what I've just described to you is not dissimilar to how I would cook a stir fry. It's just that when you cook a stir fry, you typically start with the meat in the beginning in the oil, cook it, and then take it out, skim it out with a slotted spoon, and then go through that whole same process and then mix it in again at the end. But to be honest with you, I think the best thing with wok stuff is going to be fried rice, just because I think that it's probably the simplest. And then, I would just say, if you like stir fries, the only other thing I could say that I really loved having a wok for that is slightly more challenging now is there is a dish that I had for the first time in a restaurant in our neighborhood in Brooklyn that is Guyanese style chow mein. So chow mein brought to Guyana by Chinese immigrants, but like done in a way that's sort of more traditional in Guyana, and it's fucking incredible. But being able to stir fry it makes it so much better. Yeah. And you can do it without it. You can do it. You mix between stovetop cooking, sauteing, and then mixing it and putting it in the oven to heat it up. Like it's fine. But like if you could actually do it stir fried, it's just it's unbeatable. So
all right. We'll break that out this weekend. Then I'll see what I can do. I'll do some fried rice. I do like a good fried rice.
You grow chili peppers too, and I would say like just 1 or 2 of your homegrown chili peppers. You'll be surprised how much, if you do it the way I'm describing, when you don't overcook it, how much of the flavor will remain. So
yeah. Well, Nate, thank you for joining us. All of you listening, as always, if you like this, you can get more on our Patreon, patreon.com/hellofaWayToDie. You can also go to the website at What a Hell of a Way to Dad, and you can sign up for our weekly emails that come through with various deals, new products in the store. Also, the video casts that I'm doing, I'm making little videos and putting them out there too. I am getting you guys so much fucking content. You can't even believe it. So everybody, all of that stuff will be available to you. Nate, thank you so much for joining me, and everybody, we will talk to you next week.
Have a good one.